Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive, everything you need to know about finance. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating area, the clean energy landscape, specifically the comeback of nuclear power. And we're focusing on one company in particular, Nano Nuclear Energy Inc., ticker symbol NNE. Our goal here is to really unpack what the public information tells us about their plans, their money situation, and, their overall potential in this pretty complex field.
Yeah, and before we get into any of that, it's really, really important we make something clear.
Yeah.
Everything we're talking about today, it comes straight from their public filings, news reports, things like that. It's purely for educational, informational purposes. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not financial advice, not in any way, shape, or form. We always say you need to do your own homework, your own due diligence, and definitely talk to a qualified financial professional before making any investment choices.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just here to help you understand the company and what's going on around it.
Absolutely. That's a crucial distinction. So let's get a quick snapshot of the stock itself, NNE. As of, let's see, June 20th or 21st, 2025, it closed around $37.31. Saw some after-hours trading near $37.25. But look at the 52-week range. It's been a ride. From a low of $6.30 up to a high of $48.20. It's definitely grabbed attention lately. It's been pretty red hot this past week, as some reports put it.
Yeah, it's moved fast. And what's interesting about Nano Nuclear Energy Inc., NNE, is just how new it is. Founded just in 2022, they're pitching themselves as an early-stage nuclear energy company. Their main thing, they say, is developing these smaller, cheaper, safer, advanced, portable, clean energy solutions.
That sounds incredibly ambitious for a company that young. Their bigger mission, they state, is becoming this commercially focused, diversified, and vertically integrated player in nuclear energy. And they seem pretty confident they can ride this wave, this nuclear renaissance people are talking about in the U.S. What's feeding that confidence?
Well, if you look around, you can see why they might feel that way. There's huge demand, right?
Yeah.
For reliable, clean power. Think about the tech industry, data centers. Plus, you've got government support, it seems, from different angles. You have the current administration's goals, pretty ambitious ones, for cutting carbon pollution by 2030, 2035. And then even former President Trump's recent executive orders back in May 2025, aiming to quadruple nuclear capacity by 2050, speed up licensing. So it points to this broad, kind of bipartisan political push for nuclear. It's not some fringe idea anymore.
Okay, that makes sense. A powerful current to swim with. So NNE isn't just betting on one horse here. They've got, four main business lines? Let's start with the one that probably gets the most buzz, their micronuclear reactor business.
Right. They've got 4 designs for these micromodular reactors, or MMRs, in the works. First is Kronos. That's for fixed installations. Think more traditional power needs, but smaller scale, more local. Then there's ZUS. That's pitched as a portable, modular, solid core battery. Sort of self-contained, maybe easier to deploy. Odin is also portable and modular, but uses a low-pressure coolant. Different design, maybe better for certain remote spots. And the last one, OEI, MMR. That one's specifically targeting space applications.
Wow, space. That's definitely thinking outside the box, or maybe outside the planet. So Kronos and Loki are aimed at bigger population areas, industrial heat, those AI data centers we mentioned, super relevant now, and space. While ZUS and Odin are more for remote places like islands, mining operations, that kind of thing. They're really trying to cover a lot of ground.
They seem to be moving quickly, too. Back in January 2025, they bought the Kronos and Loki assets from Ultrasafe Nuclear Corporation. That was an $8.5 million deal. And then, importantly, early April 2025, they announced this partnership with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. They're planning to build the first Kronos research reactor there. So it's not just drawings on paper. They're moving towards actually building things.
And the regulatory side, that's always huge in nuclear. Didn't they get some approval recently?
They did. Late April 2025, the NRC, that's the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, gave its final safety evaluation report approving the Kronos advanced fuel design. That's a major step. Clearing those regulatory hurdles, especially early on, is a big deal. It can take a really long time. For ZS and Odin, they've moved past just design into physical testing. Idaho National Laboratory did design audits. And back in March 2025, they actually put together the first ZUS reactor core hardware. For non-nuclear testing, mind you, but still, physical hardware.
Okay, and they need places to actually do all this work, right? Building facilities.
Exactly. They've invested there, too.
Yeah.
August 2024, they bought a 14,000 square foot place in Oak Ridge, Tennessee for $1.7 million. That's becoming their nuclear technology HQ. It's getting an $800K renovation now. And then January 2025, they leased a custom-built demonstration facility up in Westchester County, New York. They finished a $3 million retrofit on that in May 2025. That one's specifically for testing the non-nuclear parts.
Okay, so that's the reactor side. Ambitious, lots happening, but you need fuel for these things. And NNE isn't just waiting for someone else to make it. That brings us to their second business line, fuel processing. What's the play here? How does it fit their whole vertical strategy?
Right, so through their subsidiary called HALEU Energy Fuel Inc., they want to build up a domestic supply chain, not just for regular low-enriched uranium, LEU, but also for HAU, that's high-assay low-enriched uranium. And this fuel isn't just for their own reactors. They want to supply the whole advanced nuclear industry. The thinking here, is that having a reliable domestic fuel source is critical. It sort of de-risks the entire sector. If you control part of that supply, or at least contribute significantly, that gives you a real edge.
And they've put money behind this too, right? I saw something about an investment.
Yeah, a $2 million strategic investment and a collaboration with a company called LIS Technologies, or LIST. They work on laser-based uranium enrichment. And this connects to something pretty big back in December 2024. LIST with NNE got selected as key subcontractors for the Department of Energy's big LEU enrichment acquisition program. It's a $3.4 billion program. NNE's specific role there is focused on fuel deconversion, actually making the fuel pellets or forms and then transporting it.
Ah, transportation. That leads perfectly into their third business line then. Fuel transportation.
Exactly. It all ties together. Back in April 2024, they got an exclusive license for a special transportation basket design. It's for moving HLEU fuel, high capacity. This design actually came out of work done by the National Labs, Idaho National Lab, Oak Ridge, Pacific Northwest National Lab.
And NNI thinks this is like the best design out there in the U.S. for moving commercial amounts of HALEU, which, yeah, you'd need if this whole industry is going to take off.
It seems to be their bet. And then in September 2024, they teamed up with a German company, GNS Gesellschaft for nuclear service, to actually produce an optimized version of this HALEU transport system, one that can handle different fuel types. Their goal is getting NRC certification for this system, and they hope to be up and running actually transporting fuel by 2028.
Okay, reactors, fuel processing, fuel transport. What's the fourth line?
The fourth one is nuclear consultation services. Now, what's interesting here is this is probably their path to revenue in the nearest term. They're aiming to start offering these services in 2025.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty smart for an early stage company like this. Generate some cash flow while the big hardware stuff develops. Any examples?
Yeah, they mentioned expecting to provide consulting to a company called DigiHost Technology Inc. by the end of Q2 2025. And DigiHost, just for context, is a big Bitcoin miner. Huge energy users. So NNE would help them with things like regulatory advice, checking out potential sites, developing a roadmap for maybe using nuclear power.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not just building things, they're selling their know-how too, building the ecosystem maybe.
By the way, if you're finding this deep dive useful, please do hit that like button and subscribe to the deep dive. It really helps us out.
So, okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about NNE's competitive edge.
Yeah.
What makes them stand out? And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. One of their big claims is their independence from government funding for their core operations. They say this sets them apart from a lot of other SMR, small modular reactor and microreactor companies out there.
That is interesting and bold, especially in nuclear, which often seems so tied to government grants and subsidies. What's the angle there? Does it mean they have to be leaner, maybe more nimble, less tied to, political shifts, but maybe it also means they face a much bigger challenge raising capital purely from private sources? It feels like a different kind of risk profile.
It definitely suggests that. They emphasize learning from past industry hiccups, like getting fuel qualified, dealing with coolants. They talk about actively de-risking their own fuel supply, which fits their vertical strategy. They also highlight their team. They call it world-class, mentioning former high-level government people, NRC officials, experts who've worked on lots of reactor designs. In a field this regulated, having that kind of expertise, that human capital, is, it's probably essential.
Right, and that vertical integration piece, reactors, fuel, transport, why is that so important in nuclear? Is it just about controlling the supply chain, or does it create other opportunities, maybe new revenue streams?
I think it's both, really. Yes, control and de-risking are huge in a market that's still developing. You don't want to be stuck waiting for someone else to deliver a critical piece, but it also means they could potentially capture value all along that chain, not just selling the reactor itself. It makes for a more diversified model. Could make them more resilient, maybe, than companies just focused on one piece.
Makes sense. But okay, let's be real. This is nuclear energy. It's incredibly complex, incredibly expensive. What are the big challenges NNE faces, especially being so young and claiming that funding independence?
Oh, the challenges are significant. Top of the list has to be regulatory complexity. Getting permits, licenses for reactors, fuel facilities, transport systems. It takes a massive amount of time and money. The safety standards, environmental rules, security measures, they're incredibly stringent, as they should be. For a new company, just navigating that bureaucracy is a huge task.
And the cost.
Yeah.
It's got to be astronomical, right?
Absolutely. Capital intensity is the name of the game. Building these facilities, developing the tech, it requires enormous amounts of funding up front. And managing those costs, plus ongoing operations and maintenance, it's a constant challenge. It's not like a software startup where you can iterate cheaply.
So are these challenges just like supersized versions of normal startup problems, or is there something unique about nuclear that makes them almost existential?
I'd say they're profoundly amplified in nuclear. The upfront capital is just massive, and the lead times before you might see revenue are incredibly long, years, potentially over a decade. And then there are the market dynamics. Politics change, regulations shift, international relations, treaties, all that can impact nuclear projects. These external forces are largely outside a single company's control.
Okay, so a really complex picture. High potential, risk, massive hurdles. Let's get into the financials then. Given everything we've discussed, the ambition, the challenges, what do the numbers actually show about NNE's current situation?
Well, looking at their public reports, they are, as you'd expect for this kind of company at this stage, pre-revenue. They're deep in development. So they've reported significant net losses. For the 3 months ending March 31, 2025, the loss was over $21 million. For the 6 months ending then, over $24 million. That kind of cash burn isn't unusual for early-stage companies pouring money into R&D in capital-heavy industries like this.
Right, spending a lot. Didn't you say they raised a bunch of money recently? How's their cash position looking?
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. Their cash and short-term investments actually jumped significantly. As of March 31st, 2025, they had over $118 million. Where did that come from? Mostly issuing common stock. Specifically, there was a private placement in May 2025 that brought in about $105 million in gross proceeds for the company. Now, it's important to note there's a current resale offering mentioned in filings, but that's by institutional shareholders selling shares they already own. NNE itself isn't getting cash from that specific offering. But yes, they did successfully raise a lot of capital recently.
Okay, so they've got a decent runway, financially speaking, thanks to that capital raise, even with the high burn rate. What about earnings per share, EPS?
Well, with those losses, the EPS is negative, naturally. Their reported EPS has sometimes surprised compared to analyst forecasts. Like March 2025, they reported minus 57 cents per share, when the consensus was expecting minus $2.11. And looking forward, analysts expect the EPS to stay negative for the next few quarters and fiscal years. Again, totally consistent with the company in this heavy investment phase before commercial operations begin.
Got it. And the balance sheet overall, with that cash infusion, how does it look?
It looked pretty solid as of March 31st, 2025. Total assets reported over $138 million and total equity over $132 million. That reflects the capital they brought in. It gives them a strong base financially to keep pushing their development plans forward, at least for the near to medium term.
Okay. And one last financial point, dividends. Are they paying any? Likely not, I guess.
Correct. NNE has stated they've never paid cash dividends, and they've said pretty clearly they don't plan to start anytime soon. They intend to keep any future earnings, whenever those might materialize, and reinvest them back into growing the business. Standard playbook for a growth company at this stage.
Right. So let's try and wrap this all up. NNE, Nano Nuclear Energy, it's a really ambitious play, trying to be this vertically integrated force in the nuclear comeback story. They've raised significant cash, made strategic buys, they're tackling reactors, fuel processing, transport, all while there's this renewed buzz around nuclear power.
It really sets up a fascinating question, doesn't it, for you, the listener, to think about. You've got these really long development timelines, commercial operations, maybe early 2030s, if things go well, and the huge capital needed for anything nuclear. So how will NNE's big differentiators claiming independence from government operational funding, that vertical integration model, how will those actually play out against traditional energy giants and other advanced nuclear startups? Can they really make it to commercialization over the next decade, largely without those government grants for operations? And how much will the broader political and public support for nuclear actually help them clear those massive hurdles inherent in a pre-revenue, high-tech, high-stakes industry. It's definitely going to be a journey worth watching for NNE and for this whole nuclear renaissance idea.
Absolutely. A lot to unpack there. We hope this deep dive gave you a clearer, maybe more nuanced view of Nano Nuclear Energy Inc. and the whole dynamic nuclear energy space they're stepping into. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and stay informed.